Alright y'all, it's Appalachia Spooky Story Time, and this one is pretty terrifying. This story comes from one of my viewers that lives in the UK, and she really wants your all's help describing possibly what she saw and what she is still encountering because of this to this day. She says to this day, because of her experience out in the Appalachian Mountains, she's unable to leave her home. She's been diagnosed with mental illnesses. So please take a listen and let me know your thoughts in the comments. Wants to remain anonymous, so for this story we are going to call her Cassie. Cassie and her boyfriend, again, were living in the UK, but they wanted to take a trip to Nashville in Tennessee. They were in Nashville, they had a great time, but they still had a week of their vacation left, so they decided they would get some camping gear and drive up to the Appalachian Mountains of East Tennessee to go camping. So they got their gear all loaded up in the car, and then they found a place to stop with a trail that they decided they were going to walk up with all their camping gear and find a place to camp for the night. Said it was absolutely beautiful, taking in all of the scenery, but then all of a sudden, as they were walking, she kind of heard some footsteps behind her, like they were being followed. Her and her boyfriend turn around, they don't see anything, and her boyfriend's like, you know, it could be squirrels, it could be animals, whatever, let's just keep going. So they keep going, and they find a little place to stop where she had a bottle of champagne in her backpack, and they were just gonna have a glass of champagne and kind of cheers to their, adventures. She said as they were sitting there, things started to feel really different than it had in the beginning of the trail. She said she felt just kind of overwhelmingly like odd. She said something just did not feel right, and they continued to hear these like footsteps out in the mountains, but they couldn't see anything. Said it oddly sounded like human footsteps, and her boyfriend was like, well, there could be some homeless people living out here or something, you just never know. Like, he was just kept trying to make excuses for these like odd noises and this odd feeling that they both had. He was like, I don't know, I just don't feel right, let's just keep walking and find a place to camp. She said the whole time they were walking to find a place to camp, though, she felt like she was being followed and like she was being watched. Find a place to set up camp, they set up for the night, they go into their tents for the evening, and she said she woke up and she remembers it was exactly 3:03 on her phone because she heard footsteps around the tent site. Again, thinking it was an animal or something, her partner unzipped the tent, looked out, and immediately goes, oh my God. She looks out and she says she sees this very tall, and it's a dark figure, very tall, dark figure, hunched over, and she said its arms were super, super long and touched the ground, like its fingers touched the ground. Then she said it had these almost white, hazy eyes. She said she immediately was just frozen in fear and panic. They zipped the tent back up, and she said she was like hysterically crying and screaming because what she saw was just something out of a nightmare. Continued to hear the footsteps around the tent, and her boyfriend was like, as soon as this thing's gone, we are bolting it for the car. She said they continued to hear it, and she continued to just have this panic until the sun came up. Once the sun came up and the footsteps stopped, they bolted to the car and immediately left. Once they got back to the UK, that was only the beginning of Cassie's nightmare, as her life for the last 10 years has been absolutely ruined. She said because of her deep depression that she fell into because of this incident, her and her boyfriend broke up. Like I said, she's not able to leave the house unless it's just to go to like the grocery store. She has terrifying, terrifying nightmares that keep her up, and she says she's unable to go to sleep until after 3:03 a.m., which is exactly the time that she saw this creature out in the woods. She has seen a psychiatrist, and she has been diagnosed with PTSD, depression, anxiety, and at one point was even diagnosed with schizophrenia. She said they put her on medication for schizophrenia because of these like things that she would see in her dreams and visions, and the pills did not work, so she quit taking them. When she found my page, she said that she did have some comfort in knowing that she is not alone in her experiences in Appalachia, which is why she wanted to share her experience, because in a way it's almost therapeutic to her. However, she did say that she's trying to find, other outlets of joy. Like, she says she enjoys makeup, so she shares some like TikTok makeup videos and things like that just to use to cope, because this event has traumatized her so badly. So to help out Cassie, if any of you all know what this could have been, again, she said it was a very dark, tall figure with long arms, and apparently whatever this thing was seemed to have followed her home. Maybe not physically, but mentally. Drop in the comments what you think this could have been. Let me know if you've ever had any experiences like this, particularly in the Appalachian Mountains. And if you want more stories like this, then just follow along.
I'm extremely tired, but go ahead and grab your popcorn, grab your snacks or whatnot, because I have a bunch of extremely scary stories that I need to share with you guys. I don't know if you guys remember in the beginning when I first started like filming videos, I would talk all about all of my experience of working at a very haunted hospital. I used to work night shift, so I had a lot of crazy things going on. I just came in contact with some of my friends from that same hospital who still work there, and apparently things have only gotten worse in the hospital, and they had a bunch of things they wanted to share with me. Starting off really strong with number one of my friends, she's actually good friends with one of the cleaning ladies, and the cleaning ladies told her this story. This cleaning lady comes around and cleans the offices like on the 4th floor that are empty for the night. So in the morning or in the afternoon, people leave for the day and the offices are empty. Her job is to kind of go up there and kind of like clean everything up, vacuum, etc. She says that she always has crazy things happening, but this is the one that really stands out to her. She says one night as she's going around in her own little world cleaning everything up, she starts to hear growling coming from one of the offices. The growling is so clear that at first she's just like, maybe somebody's working super late and they're like watching a movie or like a scary movie, because she just kept hearing the growling coming from that office. She continues on cleaning the other offices when the growling gets so out of control that she decides that she's gonna go knock on the door to see if they're okay, like maybe something's wrong with them. She says the minute she knocks on the door, there's like this deafening silence that just happens. Like everything just goes completely quiet. Like you can literally hear a pin drop. She's standing there completely terrified with chills going up and down her body, just like waiting for something to happen, when out of nowhere, like the silence is broken by an even louder growl coming directly from behind the door, like literally right at her face, followed by scratches. This completely terrifies her so badly that she literally runs out of the building and goes home. Like she doesn't even care, she just leaves. The next day, after she has kind of gotten herself together, she does decide to go back to work, and she mentions it to the nurses, and the nurses confirm. They tell her that they're so happy to feel validated, because they have always felt things in that room that no one ever believes them, and the fact that she also heard it makes them feel like they're not crazy. This is just story number one out of many. Let me know if you guys want me to do more parts.
I'm pretty sure this is going to be the last home healthcare video that I'll be making. I have to double check my book, but around that time I was always writing things down whenever they happen, but I'll have to double check and let you know. So let's get into it. So around this time I was packing a bag about 3 days, sometimes even 2 weeks, and I'll be going to these clients' houses. I was working for this home healthcare company. And so I packed a bag for the 24th, 25th, and 26th of December, and I was at this woman's house. Now I had already been to her house months before. I had been there consistently for months, and nothing ever happened in her house. So here we are. This is a small house. We're up in the living room and we're dancing. She likes to dance. And so we're up there dancing, having a ball. And I noticed a lot of new decoration. I'm like, oh, you've been decorating? She's like, yeah, the other girl, whenever she's on shift, she helps me decorate. I'm like, cool. The doorbell rings. I go to the doorbell. I go to the door. I open the door, and it was my coworker, the woman that she was just talking about. And she brought this chair. And I'm like, you brought a chair? She was like, yeah, it's adding to our decoration. This is something that we like doing together. I'm like, okay, cool. That was sweet. So she brings the chair in. When she brought the chair in, she set it all the way at the end of the hall. And it had this painting that was over it. So I'm like, okay, that's sweet. So we continue our stuff. The lady leaves. We continue dancing. And then the woman wants to get in bed. So I put her in bed. Fast forward to after I put her in bed, I put the motion sensors down just in case she gets up. So the motion sensors started going crazy. And I looked at the camera, and she's laying in bed. She's knocked out. So finally I stand up, and when I stand up to go check and peek my head around the corner, there's this dark figure sitting in the chair that my coworker had just brought into the house. Can't make out if it's a man or a woman just yet, but it was a very dark figure, and I heard stomping, but it didn't sound like feet. And then I look over, and it has like this cane in its hand, just stomping it on the ground, on the floor. So finally I get up, I run over to my duffel bag, and I get my Bible out, and I get to praying. And it's just sitting there looking at me like, and I said, so you just not gonna go? Like, you just not gonna leave? So then once I started to get aggravated, and I started to really be really forceful with the words from the Bible, that's when it stood up and it walked into the bathroom and then it walked back out. But when it walked back out the bathroom, it did this high jump in the air. Like, okay, what was that about? After it did that little high jump, that weird thing, it disappeared from in front of me. But I heard the motion sensor, so I walked over to the camera. And when I walked over to the camera, I see his face. Yes, it was a he in the camera, and he's pointing at my client. So, of course, I'm aggravated. I go back there and I flick the lights on. I didn't care if she was asleep. I was just worried because I know you ain't here for her. Not right now. Not right now. So then fast forward, I played it off to the woman like, oh, do you have to use the bathroom? I'm so sorry that I flicked the light on like that. And so she's like, oh, no, I'm okay. So she lays back down. Once I go back out to the living room, I get to praying. I get to like drawing crosses over all the doors, over all the windows. But next thing you know, I feel something walk behind me. And when I felt it, I turned around and he's right here in my face, like right here in my face. I almost dropped to the floor, y'all, but I couldn't do it because then he'd be thinking that he had one up on me. So that entire night, he would just randomly pop up in my face. He would randomly pop up on the sofa, or he would be sitting in that chair that my coworker brought. Now, this is the scariest part. The scariest part is the fact that right after he left up out of my client's room, I could hear her gasping for air like she needed me. And so I ran in there and I sat her up on the edge of the bed and I'm like, are you okay? And she said that she said, I'm not ready to go yet. I'm not ready to go. Now, all this time, she's never talked like this. And so I'm just like, you ain't got to go yet if you don't want to. I think what made me more nervous about it is the fact that it was a dark figure that came to collect her. At that point, I was just like, do you want to pray with me? We had never prayed together before, but in that moment, she wanted to pray. So we prayed, right? So fast forward to while we're praying, he just sat down. Like, I wait. So I think that scared me too, because what has this woman done in her life that is so terrible to have a dark figure come to collect her and take her somewhere, and not even a prayer can stop it, can stop her from going with him. Now, here's the even scarier part. I got a feeling to look outside. So I went ahead and I looked out the window. And when I looked out the window, there were two other dark figures standing on the sidewalk. That scared the crap out of me, because I know y'all better just be here for her. So I hear knocking on the door. Of course, I'm not answering it because I just looked out the window. I saw y'all out there. I'm not opening the door. And so the woman, she starts getting hysterical and she is like really going crazy. I'd never seen her like this before. And so do y'all know, like probably not even 24 hours after I left, that woman passed away. She passed away. And in my head, I felt so bad. But in my head, I was thinking like, oh my God, this family gonna think I'm the Grim Reaper.
Another spooky story for you guys. This one was submitted by someone who just went on a casual date with a guy. And not too long after, things started to get really weird. So the story reads, I went on a date with a guy I met on a dating app, and I'm still not sure what really happened afterward. At first, he seemed perfectly normal. His name was Daniel, and we actually had some mutual friends, but we'd only seen each other in passing. He had a decent job, he had a nice smile, and he didn't give me any strange vibes when we were on our date. We met for coffee and he was polite, but I kind of felt like he was a little bit too quiet for my taste. Afterward, he texted me a few times, but I didn't really feel any spark, so I just gave polite responses and didn't encourage him to continue contacting me. After a while, he stopped texting me, so I thought that was just the end of it. But a few days later, weird things started happening. The first thing I noticed was my porch light. I'd come home from work and it would be flickering like the bulb was about to go out. Sometimes it would buzz, other times it would dim and brighten like something was interfering with it. I changed the bulb twice, but it kept happening, so I ended up calling an electrician to come and check it out. Well, they said the bulb and wiring were both perfectly fine. Then, one night, I pulled into my driveway after dark, and I thought I saw someone standing at the far end of my yard. I squinted, and it looked like someone tall in dark clothing, but as soon as my headlights hit that spot, it was empty. I told myself it was probably just the shadows or the streetlights or something like that. The problem is, it kept happening. Almost every night after that, when I'd come home, I'd get this overwhelming feeling that someone was watching me. Sometimes I'd look out the window and swear I saw a man standing just beyond the reach of the porch light. Then I started getting some really strange text messages. Daniel would message me at really strange hours, sometimes between midnight or 3 a.m. He asked me some really strange questions, like, do you ever feel lonely in that nice house? Or, do you ever feel like you're screaming and no one can hear you? I never told him where I lived, and I hadn't shared my address, my neighborhood, or anything that would identify where I lived. One night, I was so freaked out about his text that I sat up in my bed and peeked out my window. I noticed the porch light was flickering again. I pulled the curtain back just an inch, and my heart dropped. There was someone standing at the edge of my yard, staring right at my window. I slammed the curtain shut and jumped out of bed to make sure every door and window was locked, and then I called a friend to stay on the phone with me until the sun came up. After that night, I blocked his number and deleted the dating app where I met him. I removed the porch light entirely and bought blackout curtains and made every effort to get home before dark. Months later, I ran into a mutual acquaintance who actually knew Daniel. She mentioned him in passing, saying how awful it was what happened. Confused, I asked her what she meant. Well, she told me that Daniel had actually died in a car accident about 2 weeks before our first date. Needless to say, I was shocked. I told her about our date, the text, and what I thought was Daniel standing outside my house. She insisted that was absolutely impossible and showed me the invite to his vigil on her phone. And sure enough, there was Daniel's picture. I went to pull up the text to prove to her that Daniel and I had been texting, but all the texts were gone. I still have no explanation for where they went, and that's when it hit me. I think the person that I met for coffee was impersonating Daniel. I don't know how that's possible, but the person looked exactly like him. And I also think whatever was standing outside of my house, waiting to be invited in, wasn't Daniel either. And here's the real kicker. I found out from our mutual friend that the accident that Daniel was in had occurred just a couple of blocks away from me. About 3 months later, I got a relocation opportunity with my job and moved out of state. Thankfully, I haven't seen the dark shadow or received any texts from Daniel since. This story really creeped me out because I can't tell if she's right and there was someone actually impersonating Daniel, or is it possible that she just saw Daniel's ghost? So what do you guys think of this story? Leave your thoughts down in the comments, and don't forget to like and follow for more spooky stories.
Scary story time from when I was in college. I went to college in a super small town in western Pennsylvania, like right over the Ohio-Pennsylvania border. And when I mean small, I mean small. Like the college students being there took up the majority of the town, and the college itself was only like 2,000 people. So super tiny, but beautiful area, lots of woods, lots of trees, lots of nature, gorgeous place, just extremely small town. One night, me and some other girls were in someone's room and just like swapping scary stories. And a girl said that she had a story that her sorority big told her. She said that another girl in her sorority, an older girl, had moved into the town after graduating, just like stayed put, got married and had a kid, and she asked this girl's big to babysit for her one night at their house. So the girl gets to the house. It's like all the other houses in this town. There's so many super old houses, like from the Civil War. I mean, very, very old homes there, and this is one of those older homes. So, I mean, easily, I think she said like well over like 120-year-old house. The house was old, like cute, but kind of creepy, and was surrounded on like, I think she said 3 sides by like a lot of woods, and then the backyard backed up to the woods as well. She got there, the parents had already put the baby to bed. I think the baby was like 1 or 2 years old. And they're like, okay, like call us if you need anything, you know, watch TV, eat, drink, whatever you want, see you in a bit. So she's hanging out watching TV, and she said that as she's watching the TV, she sees a shadow go past the 2 windows. She's like, okay, I mean, that's kind of creepy, but you know, we're by the woods, could have been an owl, could be anything. Shadow, car driving by. A little bit later, she sees the shadow, but go in the opposite direction by the windows. She's like a little creeped out, like kind of pauses the show, like listens to hear if she hears anything outside, wondering like, you know, is she imagining this or not? And ultimately was like, don't be a baby, just keeps watching the show. And then she sees the shadow pass by the window a 3rd time. And at that point she was like, no, I'm calling somebody. Like I said, this is a super small town, so the police have nothing else to do. They turned up immediately. 2 police officers. They came in, they were talking to her in the living room, and she said, I think there's someone like prowling around the yard here. I don't know if it's like a peeping Tom looking in the windows, but like, I'm here by myself with this baby, and there's somebody outside. So the police are like, you know, we looked around outside, we don't like see any footprints, like we don't see any signs of like someone trying to enter in. There's no weird cars parked on the road. You know, did you see there's a baby here? She says, yeah, the baby's upstairs. And the one cop's like, okay, well, let me go just like check around upstairs, like go check on the baby. So at this point, the girl's like feeling kind of stupid because she's like, there's nothing outside. Like, is this house haunted? Like, what the hell's going on? Then as she's standing there talking to the one cop and the other cop is upstairs, they suddenly hear like a commotion, like yelling, banging, shouting, you know, stuff crashing around upstairs. The other police officer starts yelling for help. He runs up there too. And it turns out there was a man hiding in the baby's nursery. A man. So the shadows that she was seeing passing by the window weren't from outside the window. The man had been walking back and forth behind the sofa while she was watching TV. That story gave me chills back when I first heard it originally, and it still freaks me out now. I'll always say that things that are humans scare me a lot more than things that are paranormal. So yeah, I'm gonna go watch The Office now. Have a good night.
I probably shouldn't be openly talking about the story in my room, but it is late, which means that it is dark and scary out there, which leaves me no other option but to just sit here on my bed and tell you guys the story. If you're really sensitive to the paranormal world, I definitely suggest you wearing your AirPods or headphones. Don't have this playing out in the open. Don't worry about me, I know how to handle this stuff. The person who submitted this would like to be anonymous, so for the sake of the story, let's call her Sarah. So Sarah has moved into this home where from day one, she was constantly hearing whispers and footsteps out in the hallway. At one point, she even saw the apparition of what looked to be a figure on a mirror and even encountered the Hat Man in this home. A couple months ago, one of her cousins decided to come over and spend the night. Being that it was kind of late, they decided to put on a scary movie to kind of set the scene. The minute they threw on the scary movie, the lights in the hallway started flickering, the chandelier lights started flickering, and they started to hear scratching coming from the back door. At first they thought that it was the dog, but when they went to check up on the dog was actually inside the house sleeping. When the movie ended at exactly 2 a.m., they both saw a very tall, dark figure run from the living room into the hallway where their bedrooms were located. They decided to try to shake it off and try to go to sleep anyways. Now the next day, it was just Sarah and her cousin at home. Sarah's dad and mom and like brothers had all left for the day, leaving just the two of them at home, when out of nowhere they heard Sarah's dad calling them from downstairs. Sarah immediately checked her dad's location and saw that he was nowhere near the house, so there was no way that it could have been her dad calling her from downstairs. They panicked and both ran into one of the bedrooms and locked the door behind them and called Sarah's mom, like frantically telling her to put on the alarm system because they felt like there was somebody in the home. The minute they went into the room and they locked the door, they heard loud banging and footsteps coming from the hallway. The motion sensors from the alarm system ended up going off due to it detecting movement. Sarah and her cousin decided to grab a bat and brace for the worst, really thinking that somebody had broken into the house. The bangs just got louder and louder, followed by whispers, and then out of nowhere, everything just went like dead. Like everything just grew completely quiet. Till this day, both of the girls have never forgotten that night. Sarah's family did end up moving out, but regardless, what would you have done in that situation? You're locked in a room with a bat, alarm systems are going off, and you hear banging and whispering right outside the bedroom door.
I just saw somebody share their scary, spooky stories, and I now want to share mine. So I'm going to make this quick. It might be long, but stay tuned. Okay, so this was 2007, 2008 in Lahaina. I was living in Kahana specifically, which is like a deeper in Lahaina on the west side. I am with my sister. We lived in an insanely big house that we had no business living in because we were on welfare. It was a really, really big house, and it was really spooky already because it was just so empty with empty rooms. We lived on Lower Honopililani Road, and we lived across from Kahana Sands. So there's this little road that goes up, and there's like, 3-4 houses on there at the time, and ours was one of those 4 houses. No one really goes up in there. It's kind of private. Anyway, this was after dinner. I just finished eating dinner with my sister. We were home alone. I was the ripe old age of 12. Where was my dad? I don't know. But it's 8 o'clock-ish at night. My sister's sitting on the couch watching TV. I'm putting the dishes away. Okay. All of a sudden, flash, like a huge flash, not just like from a camera, I stop what I'm doing. I told my sister, I'm like, why are you taking pictures of me? She's like, she turns around. She's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I just saw the flash. You just took a picture of me. She's like, no, I didn't. 2007, 2008. None of us had a phone. Okay, we were young. We never had a phone. Where did that come from? Then it happens again. Like, I'm like, what the fuck? And me and my sister are looking at each other, and I'm like, holy shit, someone's like watching us right now. Like I said before, we was living on a street, okay, like a private street. Nobody was walking up and down it. Like, we're not used to seeing people outside. So it was like, why would someone be taking photos of us? No one ever is up here. I'm so scared. I'm about to pick up the house phone to call 911. And right when I was about to do that, the lights shut all off, except for the TV, because my sister's watching TV. The lights are off. Okay, me and my sister are looking at each other like, what is going on? And of course, in my mind, I'm like, we are getting robbed at this moment. I was like, I knew something was off, but I was like, it didn't occur in my mind that it would be like a spooky thing. I just was like, shit, I'm about to get robbed. I had to, like, there was a machete. I was gonna go grab the machete. And all of a sudden, I kid you not, a fucking orb comes through the TV, and not like a small little orbs like you see in pictures or paranormal files, like huge orb, like the size of a human being. I forgot to mention that the orb is like neon green, like an orb comes through the fucking TV, and the TV is screeching, like screeching, and me and my sister are freaking out. And in a split second, this orb fucking shots through the TV. Me and my sister run upstairs, okay, and we are like so scared out of our minds. In my head, I'm still thinking that we are getting robbed, and I can't get the house phone because it's connected to the wall. So me and my sister are now in our bathroom, which is connecting our two rooms together. Okay, so my back was against my bathroom door to my bedroom, and her back was against her bedroom door bathroom. And we're just standing there thinking like someone was gonna come in. We locked it. We did everything thinking that we were gonna get robbed. But then we sat in the bathroom and we kind of reflected on what just freaking happened. I'm 12. My sister's like 7, 8. Okay, we are children. And my sister was like, did you think that was a ghost? It didn't occur to me till that moment. I was like, oh shit, was that a ghost? And I'm thinking about it now. We're sitting in the tub. The screeching noise lasted like a little bit longer, like when we got into the bedroom. Like, so I was like, oh, the TV's broken or something. I was trying to make it logical, but my sister was like, I swear to God, that was a ghost. And she was sitting on the couch, so she saw it firsthand. And so me and my sister sat in that bathroom till my dad came home. We don't even know what time he came home because I'm pretty sure we fell asleep in the tub. Yeah, until this day, we still talk about that freaking scary, spooky time because we still can't figure out what the hell that was. Like, flash, screech, giant orb. Anyways, if you live in Lahaina or Kahana and you know the exact place that I'm telling you right now, if anyone can tell me if it's like a graveyard or like if our house is in some direct, like, I digress. Anyways, that's my scary, spooky story. You guys have a story similar, or if someone can tell me what the just happened to me and my sister back in 2007, please let me know.
Today's story is about El Puente de los Dwendes in Puebla, Mexico. Translation: the Bridge of the Dwendes in Puebla, Mexico. This bridge is real. A lot of people have not gone to the bridge. Obviously, people can go if they want to. I've seen pictures of people capturing what they think is a duende in them, which is creepy. And just so you can get an idea, this is the actual Puente de los Dwendes. So yeah, we'll make sure we won't go there. So the story goes, or I should say the legend goes, because it's because of the the story I'm about to tell you, where people have been warned to like never go to this bridge. Kids who grow up in the area are warned to never go to that bridge. People claim that people who go there and get taken by the duendes don't come back. They say that the duendes are very bad and that they will drag people down to their bridge. And thanks to the one and only person who was able to escape is why we know what we know about this bridge. So there was this guy who had just left a party and he was really drunk. Because he was so cold at nighttime, he decided that before he went home, he was gonna go and get some wood so that he could start a fire. The only wood that he was able to get was really close to the bridge. Because of the stories that he had heard about the bridge and the duendes, he decided to get the wood really quickly and head back home. So as he turned around with the wood that he was able to get to go back home, he saw this really big chicken. He thought to himself, well, this chicken couldn't belong to anybody because everybody who has chickens would always have them in cages. He decided that he wanted to get that chicken so that he could take it home and eat it. However, when he would try to get the chicken, even though the chicken seemed to be moving very slowly, he wasn't able to capture it. And because he really wanted to eat that chicken, it was a big chicken, he really wanted to feed himself, he's like, I'm not giving up, I'm gonna get that chicken. He kept following this chicken until he realized that the chicken had stopped right in the middle of the bridge, and he realized that he was standing on one end of the bridge of the duendes. As he's realizing that he's standing on the edge of that bridge, he decides that he really wants to run, but his body betrayed him and he could not move. He said that it almost felt as if his body was like asleep, and all of a sudden he just started walking towards the bottom of the bridge without him wanting to go there. He said that as he was getting closer, he could hear laughters and like people talking under the bridge. That's also the moment where he turned to look at where the chicken was standing in the middle of the bridge, and he saw where that chunky, chicken he wanted to eat turned into this little person with a hood on. That this little duende was now looking at him, just laughing at the fact that they tricked him. For a moment, the guy was able to move his body by himself, like it wasn't asleep, it wasn't being controlled. He put his arm out and started praying, just saying prayers over and over and over again. After that, he remembers saying to himself, God, if my body is to be with these demons, at least let my soul go with you. In that moment, he heard where all these duendes started screaming almost like if they were in agony and pain. He remembers these duendes going to him, trying to attack him, but he regained full control of his body and he started running away from that bridge. He almost felt like he had blacked out. The next day in the morning when he woke up, he thought that everything that had happened to him the night before was a dream. However, he started feeling a lot of pain near his ankles. When he looked down, he had a lot of scratch marks and he was still bleeding from his ankles. Apparently, this duendes did try attacking him, but he managed to get away. When he finally got up and started walking out, there was literally a trail of blood from him running home and a lot of like chicken feathers all over the place. He did continue walking until he realized that that blood trail was gonna end up at El Puente de los Duendes, at the bridge of the duendes. I would have never left my house after that, because what the hell? Also, the fact that this is like the only story that we've heard from someone who has gotten away from them there, and because of that people refuse to go to this bridge, is so crazy. But what do you guys think?
Next story comes to us from our friend named Sydney, and in her email she wrote that she wants to preface everything by saying that she cannot prove that this was not a mental health situation, but she also can't prove that it was. Hello, Sydney. I had to. But Sydney said that when she was growing up, she had this cousin and his name was David, and she said that David was just extremely smart, just off the charts, to the point where he actually tested at genius level. They grew up together, they were near the same age. Her and David become very close, almost like brother and sister, even though they are just cousins. When David graduates high school, unfortunately, he doesn't have the funds to attend college, even though he is so smart. He was not able to get any sort of scholarship, so he decides that he's going to join the military, and after he's done serving his time, he's going to use the GI Bill to go and pay for college. At the time that David joins the military, he doesn't actually believe that he's going to see any active combat because we are not in any sort of conflict right now. Unfortunately, that changes on September 11th, 2001. Then shortly after this, David is shipped into an active war zone. To make a long story short, David does that for a while. He comes back home, and Sydney said that David is not the same person anymore. Nothing behind his eyes had changed. At this point, David has served his time. He is not going to re-up or re-sign and stay in the military. He's decided that he's done. He doesn't want to do that anymore. But he has obtained the GI Bill, so hopefully he can go off to college and have that taken care of. One day after he comes home, David goes and he visits Sydney at her house, and they're sitting in the kitchen, and she's looking at him, and she can just tell that he just looks empty. He just looks like a shell of the person that he used to be. And Sydney asks him if he's comfortable opening up about what happened while he was over there. David confides in her and ends up telling her, you know, here's the thing. The way that I feel is that if I let go for 1 second, my entire mind is going to slip and I'm going to be lost inside my own head. At this point, Sydney doesn't really know what that means. Unfortunately, she's not well schooled in mental health or PTSD. But Sydney ends up telling David, listen, if you ever need anything, I'm obviously always here to talk, even though I may not be much help, but I will help you in the best way I can. If you feel like you need professional help, I will also help you with that as well. David actually kind of takes offense to this, and he's like, oh, so you think that there's something wrong with me? And Sydney's like, no, I'm just saying after what you just said, I just want you to know that I'm here for you. I can't imagine what you saw over there. After this, David leaves abruptly, and he's like, he's angry. Sydney's feeling like, okay, that was weird, but I'm just going to give him space. I don't know what I did. A few weeks after this, David shows up on Sydney's front porch at 3 a.m. He ends up confiding in Sydney that he is seeing things that are not there. And Sydney's trying to understand, and she says, was it like flashbacks? Are you seeing like people? Are you seeing... And David tells her like, no, I am not seeing that. I am seeing evil. Sydney is thinking this must have something to do with the memories and the things that he experienced over there, and we need to get him professional help. So she ends up pulling all of her family together and trying to figure out a way that they can get David the help that he needs. He says that he does end up like seeking mental health help and being treated for mental health issues and PTSD and things like that, but she's not going to go into detail about it because the doctors had him on so many medications. They had him monitored. He met with people, and they could never put their finger on a diagnosis that was actually going on. At first, the doctors were thinking, okay, PTSD, flashbacks, not that. Then they're thinking, okay, this must be some sort of a mental health break, maybe like schizophrenia, like maybe a personality disorder, but it, for some reason, wouldn't spin that way. Like it was, he knew that these things like weren't real, that they were not seen by other people, but they were things that he was seeing. However, he never went into detail about the things that he would see. Finally, after this goes on for a few years, where David is not able to go to college, he's not able to get an education, he is highly medicated, he is constantly seeing someone to talk about mental health and PTSD and like the VA, whatever. Sydney can tell that David is just exhausted, and she actually is not that close with him anymore because she doesn't feel comfortable. They never know what mood he's going to be in. They never know how he's going to react to things. Then one day, Sydney and David are at a family function, and they're kind of off by themselves. And Sydney finally asks David, and she's like, why don't you tell me what you see? Because at this point, David had not told anyone in his family what he was actually seeing. So for some reason, at this point, David decides that he's going to open up, and he looks right at her, and he said, I see demons, Sid. Sydney says she looks at him and she's like, what do you mean? Like you're hallucinating demons? And he tells her, no, it's not like that. It's like, I can see the evil in people. I can see the demons in people. I can see this battle that's going on that no one else can see. But I know that no one else can see it. And I know that it's a hallucination, I guess. I don't know. But these are the things that I see. At this point, Sydney knows that David has been through a lot. And him opening up and actually telling her what he is seeing is a big step. And even if she doesn't believe him, she doesn't feel like it's her place to judge him or make him feel terrible for the fact that he's telling her these things. So she just listens. And he actually ends up telling Sydney, I haven't even told this to my doctors, like what my actual hallucinations are and what I am seeing, but I see demons. I see the evil in the world. I see the evil on people. I see them hanging on the backs of people. I can see when there are demons with people. I can see angels and demons fighting. I can see these things. I've seen them since I went overseas, and I saw them when I came home. It will not stop. No matter what medication I take, no matter what mental health professional I see, it will not stop. Sydney listens. She finally tells him, like, hey, listen, you need to tell your doctors. Like, you need to open up about what you were seeing, because that might be a way that they can help you, figure out what's going on up here. So David agrees. And he does end up opening up to more people, mental health professionals, doctors, about what he is actually seeing as far as demons, angels fighting, demons on people, demons around people, demons in our world just flying around. The more and more that David opens up about this, the more and more he talks about what he sees. And he says that it is pretty much all the time. And he says he can look around and he can see just basically up in the sky or all around us in the world that there is a battle of good versus evil. It's just that we don't see it the way that he sees it. She said that David is descriptive. He can walk down the street and he can see these things just perched on buildings like gargoyles, these dark entities just hanging off of people's backs. He can also see good things, which are basically angels, and he says that they're just giant beings of light that have no real physical form. David is opening up about these things, and he's telling more and more people about what he is seeing in hopes that someone can help him or explain to him what is happening. David is actually starting to make some progress. One night, David is leaving work, and he ends up calling Sydney, and he tells her, hey, something really bad is happening. I don't know what's going on, but these things are, like, crowding me. They are flying all around me, like, darting down at me as I'm walking. So Sydney ends up telling David, look, get on the train and just come to my house and we will figure it out. That's the last time that Sydney ever talks to David. And this is what David's final moments were like. David got on the train to go to Sydney's house. He makes it to the stop. He gets off the train. He walks out into a crowded intersection. People everywhere, cameras. He's at a train stop, like a metro stop. David hops a barricade like he's running from something, runs into the middle of the highway, is hit and unalived by a vehicle that no one has ever been able to identify and a driver that has never been charged with hit and run. Sydney said that this happened two years ago, and they still have no answers. When Sydney gets the news of David's passing, she is, of course, very upset. Time passes, they do the funeral, and she actually ends up helping to clean out David's things. She said that the one thing that she remembers from when she was, like, cleaning out his apartment is the fact that, like, there were so many medications. Just piles and piles and piles. But she gets that all cleaned up. Some time goes on. She thinks about David quite often, but doesn't dream about him, doesn't see him, nothing. About 3 months passes and Sydney goes to bed one night and she has a dream about David. And she says that she walks into this place that looks like a bar from like 1980. It even has the green lights above the booths and this dark wood. It's very dark, very smoky. People are literally smoking inside. At one of the booths in this bar is her cousin David. So she's so excited to see him. She walks over and she sits down and she says that he finally looks to be kind of at peace and pretty whole again. And he's just sitting in the booth smoking a cigarette. She says it's basically like word vomit. She's asking David all of these questions. She's talking to him and he's just looking at her with a smile on his face. But he never answers any of her specific questions. Finally, Sydney's getting kind of frustrated and she looks at him and she says, okay, but then why am I here if you're not even going to talk to me? Sydney said that David looks at her and just starts speaking in a different language. The same phrase over and over and over again. She tells him, like, I don't understand. And he just keeps speaking the same phrase over and over and over again. Finally, Sydney wakes up and she's sitting there and she's like, what the heck was that? And this is not the first time that this happened, so I find this really crazy. But as it would turn out, in the dream, David was speaking Latin, and he had repeated it so much that it was stuck in Sydney's brain, so she was able to look up a translation for it. I'm not going to try to speak the phrase because I cannot speak Latin, but just know that its translation was, the stars do not bind us, they guide us. Basically meaning that fate isn't, fate. It can nudge you in one direction, but that's not going to be the direction that you have to go. You can just be kind of guided there, but I don't know. Sydney says that she has turned this over and over in her mind and just can't understand why that's what David ended up telling her. But either way, Sydney says that she looks at this dream as a way of knowing that David has found peace, and that she knows of, and that David's parents know of, and her family knows of. David was never given a definitive diagnosis as to what was causing what he was seeing. And the fact that after he started opening up about what he was seeing, he was unalived in a hit and run, and even though it was a well-monitored area of public transit with cameras and everything, they never were able to catch who did this to him. But Sydney says she also cannot prove that this was not some sort of a mental illness, which I respect a lot, because while it is, scary and unknown, at the same time, science exists, and you always have to know in the back of your mind that the human brain is a very crazy place, like the things that happen in there. And I don't think still to this day that we're that well versed in mental health and mental disorders. I think we have a long way to go. Sydney said that she also can't prove that it was mental illness. So let me know what you guys think about that, and I hope that everyone has a wonderful day.
It is time for another spooky story. I am Autumn in Appalachia. If you have a spooky story of your own that you would like to share, please feel free to send me a DM. Make sure as well to add me on Facebook, same handle, Autumn in Appalachia. Without further ado. This story comes from Cindy, and it is a shorter spooky story, but man, is it a creepy one. Cindy said that when she was 15 or 16 years old, she and her family moved from Louisiana to Mississippi. When they first moved, they were staying with Cindy's aunt, but not too long after, Cindy's parents found a house to buy and they moved into it. She said it was an older, red, historic kind of home and that it used to be a railroad bunker way back in the day. Cindy and her family, almost immediately after moving in, started noticing some odd and particular happenings around the house. She said there would just be very strange noises that couldn't quite be explained, that sometimes things in the house would go missing and then wind up in very oddly specific places. None of the family members had been moving the objects around the house, and at first they just tried to chalk it up to it's an old house, or, we just moved in, old houses settle, things like that. But as the weeks passed, Cindy and her sister began having an experience that they could not explain and to this day have no explanation for. Cindy and her sister shared a bedroom. This room had a door that led to a screened-in porch outside, and she said that this door was very heavy duty and that the lock on it was a particular kind of lock. There was just no way that you could break through it unless you took the entire door down with some sort of a tool. Over and over again, Cindy and her sister would wake up in the morning to this door being wide open. The lock would be unlocked, the door is just open, and they knew neither of them were doing it, and they thought, you know, maybe it's our parents like messing with us or something, but they were too scared at first to tell their parents what was happening because they were scared if it wasn't their parents that their parents wouldn't believe them or think that they were just messing around. That theory, though, was quickly disproven because Cindy's mom started noticing when she would come in the room in the mornings that that door would be open, and she started actually jumping onto the girls being like, y'all need to stop leaving this door unlocked, don't leave the door open, and they're like, it's not us. Her mom's like, well, it's definitely not us, and they're like, nah, there's no way, like, you guys have got to be playing a prank on us, and her mom's like, I'm not playing a joke, like, y'all need to stop messing around and make sure for our safety that you are keeping that door shut and locked at night. After this talk with their mom, though, the experiences continued to happen with them waking up and the door being open in the mornings. They knew at that point, with it continuing to happen, that it was definitely not their parents playing a prank on them, and it's definitely not Cindy or her sister, and there's nobody else in the house, so they do not know how to explain it. They eventually, because it happened so much, got sick of it and decided one night before going to sleep that they are going to get a heavy wooden chair and wedge it under the doorknob, so there is absolutely no way that anybody can open the door, and if they attempted to open the door, Cindy and her sister would wake up because they'd hear it. After they feel that they have this door properly barricaded with this heavy wooden chair, they lay down to try to go to sleep. And when they finally get to that point where you're not quite awake, not quite asleep, they suddenly jolt out of bed, and to their horror, they see this chair, this heavy wooden chair, fly across the room, and the door slams open. Without a word, Cindy's sister bolts out of her bed into Cindy's bed and is like, I am terrified. I am sleeping with you. Cindy's like, hell no, I'm not sleeping in here. They both get up, leave the room, and they go stay the night in her mom's room. So they, of course, end up telling their mom what happened. Their mom actually believes them, and the next day she blessed and prayed over the house, and she said that nothing else happened after that with the door in particular. But that's not to say that there is not still, to this day, something wrong with that place, Cindy said. She remained there for years. In fact, she is an adult now, has children of her own, and she very recently just moved out of that place, but still has some belongings that she's left behind. She said that on the seldom occasion she does have to step foot back into that house to gather some of her belongings, you can feel that the energy in there has gotten worse. It is more oppressive. She said it almost feels hard to breathe sometimes, and that the last time that she went there, it immediately, when she stepped foot through the door, triggered a migraine so bad that it made her throw up, and she's actually tempted to just leave the rest of her belongings behind there. So there's not quite any closure to this story. It is still an actively haunted location, and there are all kinds of paranormal and spooky happenings that she had over the years living there. Now, she also, because of the history of the property, wanted to do a little bit of digging to see if she could uncover anything, and she, in fact, did. So back when the railroad used to run through or by that property, she found, or at least rumor has it, that the man who used to own that house was like a serial unaliver, and that he would unalive hobos and throw them off into a cistern nearby. So that is terrifying. It is a horrifying thought, and could that potentially explain some of the dark energy in that home? I don't know. You guys let me know what you think in the comments. If you have any questions for Cindy, let her know in the comments as well. She will be tagged in this video, and stay tuned for some more spooky stories.